On Grilling J.R. this week, Conrad and Jim Ross covered the 2006 run for John Cena. One of my favorite years in John Cena's career. One of my favorite years in WWE, honestly. Like, that was, to me, like the peak of the Ruthless Aggression era. And this was right around the time that the ECW was coming back full time. We had just had the ECW One Night Stand pay per view the year prior, and it was a huge hit. And all these ECW guys were available, so the idea came up, hey, well, let's bring it back full time. So to kick this thing off, they went into ECW One Night Stand 2006, and this was headlined by the newly crowned and on the rise superstar John Cena as WWE champion, facing off against the Money in the Bank ladder match winner and cashing in, Rob Van Dam. And here were Jim Ross's thoughts about this. Check this out.
We already sort of teased it a moment ago. Rob Van Dam, easy for me to say, picks up the win in 20 minutes and 39 seconds. The atmosphere that night was off the charts, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
ECW fans here were chanting same old shit. Fuck you, Cena. You can't wrestle. And it was quite the atmosphere. He takes his shirt off, throws it to the crowd. They throw it back. It made for great TV.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, was it a risk in making our guy who we just heard the main event at Triple H, at WrestleMania say, oh, you're a transitional champion. You can't wrestle. Man, just a handful of months later, fans are giving it right back to him that same way.
Yeah, it was challenging, but John weathered the storm.
Yeah.
And he showed great character. He showed great integrity as far as the profession was concerned. He went out, and as any true pro would do, he ran the plays that were called, and he did it very well.
This is one of my all-time favorite WWE pay-per-views. Yeah, I'd still consider it a WWE pay-per-view, just because it was so heavy, not only produced by WWE, but so heavy on WWE talent. You could call it an ECW pay-per-view. Regardless, this is one of my favorites. Like Jim said in this podcast episode, this was one of the better atmospheres he's ever seen for a WWE show. I agree. I think the smaller, more intimate setting, I think the fans were so tightly packed in. Of course, that would make you gasp today in the COVID era, but back then it looked like a concert mosh pit. It wasn't a bunch of families sitting in their seats. It was a bunch of rabid 18 to 40-year-olds sweating all over each other, wearing black t-shirts, screaming EC Dub. And this was the infamous pay-per-view, if you remember, that had the sign. It was more like a bed sheet or something that said, if Cena wins, we riot, hanging from the rafters. And you really had that feeling watching that show that, if Cena wins, the crowd's probably going to riot. I would not have ruled that out at the time, but it was such a spectacle. It was something that, sure, if you'd seen ECW before, it fit right in with the ECW tradition, and that's why you could definitely make a case, say this was an ECW pay-per-view, not just in brand and talent, but in the energy that it put out. Even though it had WWE talent, this was such an ECW show. Look at when Randy Orton faced Kurt Angle earlier, and here's two WWE guys, but the ECW fans ate Kurt Angle up because they respected him. So they took him in as their own. And, there was always that rumor that Kurt was possibly looking at joining ECW anyway. So it was kind of like redoing something that never got to happen the first time. So the ECW fans didn't hate Kurt Angle, but they hated Randy Orton, and they gave it to him hard. But this was nothing compared to the reaction to John Cena from the rabid crowd. Such a fantastic fucking environment. The match was so-so. It was okay. And it had a schmozzy finish and all of that kind of shit. But the crowd, they were rabid. Cena took his shirt off, and he always threw his shit in the crowd. Some lucky fan would take it and bring it home and put it in a fucking glass case and treasure it forever, or wear it every night when they go to bed. Whatever the fuck. But here they were throwing it back at him, and he kept attempting. Okay, that guy didn't want it. Maybe that guy wants it. Nope, he didn't want it. Maybe that girl over there, she wants it. No, there were no girls there. What am I talking about? That guy, that guy, that guy. Everybody kept throwing it back. And people were even spitting on it. I think a guy wiped his ass with it a little bit. And they kept throwing it back at John Cena. And this was a crowd that wanted Cena's blood. And they were gonna get it whether Rob Van Dam did the job for them or if they had to jump the rail and do the job themselves. I highly recommend if you're new to wrestling and you're not really familiar with those older shows. It's crazy to say that a 2006, that the Ruthless Aggression era was old now, but fuck it, that's getting close to 20 years now. 15 years ago. That's ridiculous. But if you haven't watched those shows from back then, I highly recommend you go back and watch this show. Just from top to bottom, it's a ECW themed show, but it's got enough WWE guys kind of sprinkled in throughout it. Where Rey Mysterio was on the card, Randy Orton was on the card, Kurt Angle was on the card, Big Show was on the card, John Cena, Rob Van Dam. Eugene made an appearance and got the shit kicked out of him by the Sandman with a kendo stick. I'm sorry, with a Singapore cane. My mistake. Sorry, guys. But man, what a great show. Again, one of my all-time favorites. I always kind of get sideways looks because I actually liked this one better than I liked the 2005 One Night Stand. And a lot, I know some of you are like gasping right now. 2005 was the greatest ever, and a lot of people will say that was the best ECW WWE show. Some even say it was their favorite ECW just period. That was much more ECW centric than this one was, but I think the story that they were telling throughout the show and just that culmination with John Cena as the fucking he was at the time he was before Roman Reigns made it cool to be shoved down our throats and reject them and boo them. It was John Cena. Earlier in the podcast, Conrad and Jim kind of speculated as to why the fans didn't take to John and why they booed him all the time in that era. And Jim kind of freestyled that he thought maybe it was just kind of the cool thing to do. Fans were just, wanting to chant something and it was trendy and all that shit. I disagree. This was the start of the WWE shoving somebody down our throats. Now, John eventually earned everybody's respect. I don't think there's too many of those people left that look back at a John Cena and still hate John Cena. Or, I think everybody at the very least has respect for him and respect the career that he put on. I mean, he had a hell of a career, a hell of a run. But at that time, he was the guy. Like, once he turned babyface, Vince had a hard on for him, and Vince just pushed him. He beat JBL at WrestleMania 21, and the fans loved it. By the time he got to WrestleMania 22, the crowds were split. They kind of wanted Triple H to get it, and that led right into this 2006 ECW show. By WrestleMania 23, when he fought Shawn Michaels, the crowd hated him, and they were fully behind Shawn Michaels. You get your kids and your girls, they loved Cena because, Cena was colorful, and he was this, and he was that. But if you were that coveted 18 to 49 demographic, whatever the fuck they say, you didn't really like John Cena. He was shoved down your throat. He was a little bit too squeaky clean for what you were into. He used to cut all those rap promos with D's nuts and all the little innuendos and stuff. So when he had that edge, he was liked. But as soon as he started kind of becoming, he was a little bit of like, I think in those early years he kind of took on like a G.I. Joe Marine style approach to it. He had the dog tags and everything. He was kind of just like the super soldier in a way, Captain America, But at the time, the fans didn't want Captain America. They wanted something more edgy, and they wanted to choose who they liked. They didn't want to be told who they liked. And this was the start of this thing where Vince was just pushing a guy, and the crowd could boo them till they were blue in the face, and Vince is going to stay the course because Vince knows better. He's that goddamn stubborn that he's just going to push and push and push. But man, that atmosphere will probably never be recreated in WWE. It's something that you would see on an indie show, the old ECWs back in the day. ICW kind of had that feel over in what was that, Scotland or England? They run that territory over there. They kind of carry that feel with them. But just go back and watch this. This was probably my favorite John Cena match, one of my favorite all-time WWE pay-per-views, and just everything about it just worked great for me. It had the Edge. I almost forgot it had Edge and Mick Foley versus Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk and Beulah McGillicuddy. Just a fantastic show. Go check it out. Enough of me ranting about it. And go check out Griling J.R. Listen to the full episode. They run through the full 2006 era for John Cena. A critical year for his career. Great shit. Check it out. Let me tell you something, brother. You can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on this channel, dude. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, brother.